Welcome to the Montage of Mayhem, a series of stories that will take you on a terrifying journey through the darkest corners of the human psyche. Each episode brings you bone-chilling tales of horror and suspense, featuring stories of terror and intrigue that will send shivers down your spine. From haunted houses and cursed objects to supernatural creatures and unspeakable horrors, we explore the mysteries that lurk in the shadows, waiting to pounce on the unsuspecting. Join us as we peel back the veil of reality and explore the depths of fear and madness. Our stories are not for the faint of heart, but for those brave enough to face the unknown. The Montage of Mayhem promises to deliver a spine-tingling experience that will leave you questioning whether the dead truly rest in peace. Get ready to embrace the darkness, because once you enter the world of the Montage of Mayhem, there's no going back. Welcome to the Montage of Mayhem, where the boundaries between industrial ambition and ancient forces collide. Tonight's story takes us deep into the heart of Conyers, Georgia, where fire, chemical spills, and something far older and darker are awakening beneath the concrete and steel of a local BioLab.
Conyers, Georgia was a quiet town once. It still tried to pretend it was, but anyone who had lived there long enough knew the truth. This place had been restless for decades. The BioLab facility that sat just off the highway was a sore spot. An ugly blot on the landscape that hummed and belched smoke, like some giant beast digesting its prey. Everyone knew it wasn't safe, but what could you do when the town's biggest employer kept assuring the public that everything was under control? Henry Mathis had been born in Conyers. He'd watched as the town grew up around the plant, the way houses were built too close, how the local schools would sometimes cancel classes because of air quality concerns. As a retired firefighter, Henry had been on the front lines when things went wrong, like the day in 2004, when a fire tore through the BioLab facility, forcing thousands to evacuate. It had been one of the biggest fires the town had ever seen, but that wasn't what haunted Henry the most. What haunted him was what he'd seen beneath the smoke and the chemical cloud. Henry kept it to himself for years. After all, who would believe an old firefighter when he said he'd seen something moving in the flames? He could never describe it properly. Not a person, not a shadow, but something ancient and angry, stirring as the smoke thickened and the chlorine gas curled through the air. He hadn't been the only one, though. His old crew had gone silent about it after the evacuation, but there was an understanding between them, a quiet pact that whatever they had seen, they wouldn't speak of. Not publicly, at least. Years passed. New fires, new chemical leaks, new alarms that sent residents scurrying behind closed windows and sealed doors. BioLab rebuilt, reassured, and reopened every time, like a machine that couldn't be stopped. And through it all, Henry watched from his small house on the edge of town, every fire pulling him deeper into the memory of what he'd seen that day. But now, at 65 years old, he couldn't hold his silence anymore. It wasn't just the fires, it was the land itself. There was something about the ground beneath BioLab. Henry could feel it in his bones, could sense it every time the earth shook and the air grew thick with chemicals. It wasn't right. Something had been disturbed. It started with whispers. After the 2024 fire, the biggest one since that hellish day in 2004, residents began speaking of strange dreams. They were drawn to the factory at night, their feet moving without will, led toward the charred, smoking ruins. People would wake up standing in their yards, staring toward the plant in a trance. Children were speaking in tongues they didn't know, their voices low and guttural. Henry had seen this before, but only in fragments. Back in 2004, there had been whispers about the land where BioLab stood, old stories from the older generations that he'd never paid much attention to. Some said the plant was built on land that had once been a burial ground, Native American, perhaps, or something older. But those were just stories, right? Just legends people told to explain the eerie feeling they got when they passed by. But this was different. The fires weren't just accidents. They were sacrifices. Maya Atkins was a journalist from Atlanta, sent to cover the latest disaster at BioLab for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She didn't believe in ghosts or sacred ground. She believed in corporate negligence and bad zoning decisions. When she got the assignment, she figured it would be the same as the last few times, a boilerplate report on an aging facility with substandard safety protocols. But from the moment she arrived in Conyers, something felt off. The residents were spooked, but not in the way you'd expect. They weren't just angry about the evacuation. They were afraid. Deeply afraid, like people who knew something they couldn't say out loud. When she interviewed them, they spoke in strange, halting phrases, eyes darting to the ground, as if whatever haunted them was lurking beneath the soil itself. At first, Maya thought it was just nerves, the effects of living near a toxic chemical plant for too long. But after a few nights in town, she started having the dreams too. They weren't nightmares exactly, but something worse, half-formed visions that pulled her toward the factory. She could see it, glowing in the night like a beacon, a dark pulse beating in the ground beneath it. The dreams left her with an unbearable urge to get closer, to stand on that cursed ground. And the closer she got, the more real the feeling became. Something wanted her there. Something old, something hungry. The next night, Henry and Maya found themselves standing at the gates of BioLab. The factory was quiet, cordoned off, smoke still lingering in the air from the latest fire. The evacuation orders had been lifted, but the town hadn't yet returned to normal. People stayed inside, locked away, fearful of what they might see if they ventured out after dark. As they stood in the shadow of the facility, Maya could feel the ground beneath her feet vibrating, like something deep below was moving, shifting, waiting. Henry pointed to the charred earth at the edge of the plant. That's where it started. 2004. We all thought it was just a chemical fire. But something came up from the ground that day. We saw it, me and my crew. We didn't know what it was, but I've been seeing it in my dreams ever since. That's when they saw it rising from the blackened ground, like smoke but solid, a shape twisting and writhing in the night. It didn't have a form, not one that could be described. But Maya could feel its eyes on her, could feel its hunger pressing against her skin, its shadowed tendrils curling through the air, pulling them closer to the earth. The ground itself seemed to open up, the factory above trembling, as if the land itself was about to swallow them whole. Maya screamed, but the sound was lost in the wind. Henry's voice was barely a whisper. It's too late. The next morning, Conyers woke up to find the BioLab factory gone. Not destroyed, not demolished, just gone. The land where it had stood was barren, the charred earth smooth and untouched, as if nothing had ever been built there at all. The authorities couldn't explain it. News stations reported it as an industrial sinkhole, but there were no cracks, no crevices, nothing to suggest that the ground had given way. People speculated, but there were no answers. No one had seen anything. No one remembered. Except Henry and Maya, who were never seen again. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, the thing that had awakened settled back into the land, waiting.
The town of Conyers would move on as towns do. Life, as it always did, would find a way to continue. For those who knew the truth, those who had heard the stories passed down through generations or had glimpsed the darkness beneath the fires, the lesson was clear. Some places are not meant to be disturbed. The ground remembers. It holds the weight of the past, the blood, the history.